Hey, how's it going? Good? I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a different video than I typically do. I mean, I usually do reviews and things like that, and I really wanted to talk about this subject, and it's whether or not the studios even care anymore. It's it's a touchy subject. It could be kind of controversial. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about. But yeah, I feel like in order for us to understand, especially with some of the properties that we love so much and what they're going through, I felt like we needed to talk about it. I've always been kind of fascinated at the movie industry itself, like everything, the way that it works, the way that you've got the studio executives who basically have all the money, how they work with creatives, the people that are actually artistic and actually tell the stories and all that stuff, and how these two have to work together. One can't exist without the other in the studio system. So it's always been kind of crazy to me. And I remember when I used to work at Blockbuster, and we used to get this thing called, I think it was just called Video Store Magazine. But it was interesting to see because you didn't see the creative side at all. It was all about the business. It was all about how the different studios, how they would market their movies, and the way that they viewed their own product. It was kind of fascinating. I mean, if you're a dork like me. And now one of the things that people bring up all the time is the term studio interference, which is kind of a weird thing depending on how you look at it, right? So if you're a creative, yeah, you're being interfered with. There's these people, these suits that have no idea how to make a movie or how to be creative or how to tell a story, any of those things. They're basically telling me what I should do for the movie that I'm making. It's a weird thing, right? And I think the best example of studio interference that I think probably anyone can look at and say, yeah, that's like a textbook. That's exactly what studio interference is Alien 3. 1992, it's a 30-year-old movie, and yeah, David Fincher had a heck of a time during the production of this movie because he was hired in as someone who was, yeah, very, very talented, but he was known for, working on a timeline. He worked on commercials and music videos. He'd never worked on a major film before from a studio. So, of course, the way that Fox looked at it, sure, we can bring this really talented guy in and we can bend him to our will. We can make this movie however we want it. We're going to do it as quickly as possible, all of these things. David Fincher wasn't having it. And David Fincher was trying to make the movie that he thought he should make creatively, artistically. He was trying to do that. So there was this constant battle between the two. And of course, turns out Alien 3 wasn't the best movie when it came out because after filming, they basically fired David Fincher and chopped up the movie and released a kind of a Frankenstein kind of movie, depending on how you look at it. But then, of course, later on down the road, there's the Alien 3 assembly cut because David Fincher has disowned this movie. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. It was exactly the thing that he thought was going to happen, and it's the thing that keeps him from working with a bunch of major studios without that creative control up front. And it's kind of an interesting thing if you watch that assembly cut. I think David Fincher was making a pretty interesting movie, and I think if you haven't seen that, you really ought to give it a shot. And then on the other hand, 10 years earlier, so 1982, you've got Blade Runner, which is another example of studio interference. Except Ridley Scott had already made Alien and he'd already made The Duelists. He was already kind of cementing himself as someone to pay attention to and to listen to. But people were not happy. The producers were not happy. The studio wasn't happy. They did not like what Ridley was doing for Blade Runner. In fact, they told him, say, look, you're okay, your movie's done, but we need more. We need Harrison Ford to go in and do this narration. Now, neither Ridley Scott or Harrison Ford wanted to do it. You can even hear it in Harrison Ford's performance. He sounds bored. He sounds incredibly like I don't want to be here. I don't believe in this. I'm just going to do it. And so, yeah, Blade Runner came out and didn't really do anything. The box office, it just tanked. It wasn't a well-received movie. Even critically, it wasn't very well received. Then, years later, someone decided to show a print of Blade Runner and do sort of like a celebration of Blade Runner. And it turns out that it was the work print of Blade Runner. No telling how they actually got a hold of it, but it started to. I mean, think about this. This is kind of really at the beginning of the internet. This thing caught fire. Warner Brothers heard of it. They said, hey, 15 years anniversary is coming up, 1997. Let's release a director's cut, right? And the rest is history. Blade Runner has gone on to be probably one of the most influential movies, especially when it comes to the cyberpunk style that we've ever seen. And the studio didn't like it. Probably one of the more interesting kind of studio choices, I guess you could say, in recent years that was really kind of strange was Zack Snyder's Justice League. I mean, this is the only example that I can think of anything like this being done. It's such an anomaly. It just doesn't even make sense. But there's so many different things that led to this actually coming to fruition. It was a perfect storm. There was all of the talk about the trouble, I guess you could say, with the Joss Whedon production after Zack Snyder was removed from the movie. You know, Joss Whedon came in, did some rewrites, did some reshoots. Nobody was happy. The movie came out, didn't do very well. And then ever since then, Zack Snyder had sort of been fanning the flames. He'd sort of been hinting that there was a different version of this and all that. And of course, you know, we've seen it, right? We saw what happened. The internet got wind of it and embraced it, and it became a trending topic for sometimes weeks. You know, Zack Snyder's Justice League, all this stuff. I mean, it was almost a mythical thing. But then HBO Max was coming out, and Warner Brothers found themselves in a very, very interesting spot because we need content for this new streaming platform. We need something that's going to drive people to subscribe to our service. And we've got this thing that people are really, really excited about. Geez, let's just do it. It's such an interesting thing. And I think people will write books about it. You know, years later, there's going to be people that are going to study this and see how this happened, because I've never seen anything like it. In all of these cases, though, you can really look at the studios as being like, we don't care about the artistic integrity of this project we're doing. We don't care if fans actually like it. All we care about is the bottom line, right? What are we going to get out of it? What's the return on the investment that we're making? Sometimes millions and millions and millions of dollars. What's the return? That's all they care about. I think a great example of this, where they're like, yeah, let's just throw it out there, is unfortunately something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is the Star Wars sequel trilogy. I love Star Wars, right? I've always loved Star Wars. And to see it being treated like this was, well, it sucks, you know? It sucks to have something that you love so much being treated just as a product and not anything important or any care about the lasting quality of it. You know what I'm saying? And whatever we think of it, though, because I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the sequel trilogy, but whatever you think of it, it is a success from Disney's point of view. I mean, think about this. Every single movie, except for 5 movies that were released in, you know, since they got a hold of Lucasfilm, only 1 movie didn't make $1 billion, which means that in a very, very short amount of time, they've made their money back. They've paid for Lucasfilm already. It's done. Everything from here on out is gravy. So it's one of those situations where you go, yeah, a lot of people didn't like some of those movies, and yet they made almost, $4.5 billion on it? Yeah, it's easy to see why Disney in particular looks at someone like Kathleen Kennedy and says, look, the internet is crying about Kathleen Kennedy for years and years and years, but you know what? She made our money back. She's doing a good job. Now, I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy is to blame for the story issues. I mean, I think there was from on high, and I'm talking about from Disney, there was so much of a focus put on getting these things out quickly that the story didn't have time to sort of really work itself out. They should have taken the time to figure out exactly what they were going to do from the first. Everybody knows this. I think any Star Wars fan can look at it and say, yeah, there was no plan. And that hurt the end product. But you know what? Like I said, from their perspective, doesn't even matter because they made their money back. Now, we talked about HBO Max. We talked about a streaming service here, but Netflix is another one where it's very strange. From a studio point of view, they are a studio, but they're also sort of the end product as well, It's not like a studio that, takes their movies and puts them in a theater, but now studios are becoming their own product with streaming services like HBO Max and Paramount Plus and all that. Anyway, but Netflix is a great example of the same sort of thinking going on. I mean, how many more amazing shows are going to get canceled before they're finished? I mean, I'm thinking about Mindhunter. I'm thinking about Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. It's kind of baffling that these shows that are so well received just get canceled. Well, it's all about the amount of subscribers that come in when these shows release, right? They can see who's watching them and who's subscribing for specific things, right? They can see that. So if all of us as subscribers of Netflix say, we watch the new season of whatever, that's great. That can be amazing for Netflix. Sure, yeah. Oh man, this was watched so many hours and all that. But at the end of the day, if it's not driving people to subscribe to Netflix, Stranger Things is one of those shows that drives people to the platform to subscribe so they can watch the new season. So when a new season drops, they can see who's subscribing and when, and they can see, oh yeah, this is definitely one of our most popular shows, and it's driving people to resubscribe. That is a very, very, very valuable property to Netflix. But in the case of Mindhunter and the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, for example, they just weren't doing that. People weren't subscribing to watch that. So it's kind of a bummer. We can say a lot of things about The Gray Man, the recent Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans movie. Some people like it, some people don't like it. But you know what? It must have done exactly what they wanted it to do, because there's a spinoff coming, there's a sequel coming. Yeah, like a whole Gray Man universe is starting to come to fruition because it must have done the job. Crazy. The Sandman has been, for the last 2 weeks, and this is as of August 25th, the date that I'm recording this, The Sandman is the #1 show for the last 2 weeks on Netflix. But here's the thing. Even the creator, Neil Gaiman, is worried that won't translate to new subscribers, and that might not mean that Netflix will renew it for a season 2, which is just baffling considering how well received this show has been. There's a chance we may never see it. Now, Neil Gaiman has said that in his contract, he can take Sandman to another streaming service or another studio or whatever. But man, it would be really smart for Netflix to keep Sandman, at least from my perspective. But then again, I'm not seeing the reports coming in. The other big news, I guess, over the last couple of weeks was all of these cuts from the DC universe, right? So, and this is Warner Brothers. David Zaslav, comes in from Discovery, and they now own Warner Brothers, and they're making some changes. One of those was canceling the production, really, of Batgirl. There was still production left to be done. There were still all of the post-production that was left to be done, and they canceled it. They said this doesn't fit with our plan going forward with DC. The other thing is that there's been a myriad of animated TV shows that have been taken off of HBO Max and just removed completely or canceled altogether. This is part of this strategy, at least from what I understand, with the whatever this new streaming service, this combined streaming service with HBO Max and Discovery Plus, when this new streaming service comes out, I don't think that a lot of animated content is going to fit in with what they're going to do going forward. So it's one of these weird things where there's a lot of people saying that oh yeah, David Zaslav is evil and all this stuff. I don't think that's what it is. It's just that it doesn't make sense for what their plan is. And Batgirl, what was going to be a direct to streaming movie, just doesn't fit in with their plans. David Zaslav has said that future movies are theatrical. That's what they want. They want theatrical. And why? It makes sense. Because when you put a movie out theatrically, you not only make the movie more profitable when it's in theaters, but then you also get the benefit of it being on your streaming service afterward, right? There's a double shot. If you just release it to a streaming service, that's all you get. You don't get any of the actual money that comes from the box office. So it makes sense that they're doing this. One of the other things that I keep seeing, and this is with, well, recently myself, and then a bunch of other reviewers, when someone puts out a review and they say that you're a shill and that you've been paid off and all this stuff. Look, here's the truth. And this is something that I never really considered, but it's important. Studios don't care if a movie reviewer likes the thing or not. They just don't. It does not matter. What they care about is that it's getting out there. So, you hear that saying that, there's no such thing as bad press. When it comes to the promotion of a movie, a reviewer talking about your movie is nothing but good because it's getting that name out there. There's a great chance that you have seen plenty of reviews on YouTube for different movies and all that stuff. Each one of those is an impression. And from their perspective, just the impression is worth it. It's such a strange thing, this whole idea of marketing and all that kind of stuff, impressions and whatnot. But that's the thing. The studios don't care. They really just want to see how profitable this thing is going to be. They don't care about the artistic integrity. They don't care about the creative venture or whatever. Now, let me make it perfectly clear. I'm talking about the studio executives. I'm talking about the studios themselves. They are a necessary evil, you could say, because they're the ones that are putting up the money for these amazing projects that we see. The whole thing, though, is that a lot of times the studios interfere with the creatives, the people that actually do care. For the most part, the creatives are doing everything they can to make a product as good as they can. Now, like I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes a studio, you can even feel it sometimes when you're watching a movie or a TV show where it's like, why is this all of a sudden this changed gears and it just feels different? Well, that's part of the studio interference. And the creatives, I have to give them credit for being able to deal with with the studio executives in so many different cases. Now, look, all I'm trying to say is I love the system. I love the way that it works. And for the most part, we get amazing stuff, right? But the thing is, you have to understand the studio executives, they're just looking at the numbers. That's all it is. And when you hear about, well, oh my gosh, there's nothing but sequels and reboots and prequels and look, you want to understand it? It's because the studios can't put their money behind something that they don't know if they're going to get any return. It doesn't make sense. They're looking at this and they're saying, well, we can make a sequel to this property that we own, or we can put the same amount of money into a brand new thing that nobody knows what it's going to be. All we have is the word of the director or producer or whatever that this is going to be a good thing. Depends. How much risk are you willing to take? How much risk would you be willing to take if you were putting this money up? Man, after a certain amount of time, you've got to have those hits. And the only way that you can guarantee that you're going to even get close to those hits is for it to be an intellectual property that people know and love already. I feel like I'm talking too long about this, but look, I feel like I just wanted to talk about it because I see so many people that they get after creators for something going wrong, and I just don't think that that's the case. And in fact, a lot of times the producers are kind of the go-between between the executives and the directors and the writers and all that kind of stuff. So in a lot of cases, the producers are on our side as well, as well as the directors and the creators. So we have to really kind of just you just kind of have to go with it, and you have to understand that you can sit here and we can talk about, oh, Disney did this and Disney did that. But guess what? If Disney didn't do all the things that they do, we wouldn't have some of the things that we know and love. So it's such a weird thing, It's like, oh, yeah, well, The Last Jedi sucked. Well, The Last Jedi led to The Mandalorian. So it's kind of one of those things where you go, okay, sometimes you just have to take with the good with the bad. So I don't know. I feel like I'm just talking here, but I'm kind of curious what anybody else thinks about this. Hopefully I didn't put people to sleep. That wasn't my intention. I just wanted to talk about it. It's been something that's been sort of, I've been feeling it for weeks now, and I just wanted to get it out and just see what people think. So let me know what you're thinking down below, and we'll talk about it. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.